Okay, well, let's just retreat a bit then. What is the big idea then, Brendan, behind the People's Convention?
The big idea is that the People's Convention is an organisation of every citizen over the age of 16. And now I know 16-year-olds don't have a vote, but that is one reform we would like to see, one amendment to the Constitution.
That's a modest reform,
we would like to see a modest reform, right? But in terms of activity on the ground, we want anyone over the age of 16 in a constituency to be involved in the people discussing who should represent us, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's doctors and academics and legal people and factory workers, sure, and active people in the community and in social clubs and so on, whom we all know, who are honest people and who have made decent contribution to the life of the community, right, mm-hmm, and to the life of the people, whom we would trust, yeah, to actually discharge the role of a people's representative, right, yeah, as a service. Yeah. Because the point is, the Labour Party and other people and other these parties of vested interest, they keep talking about being a politician being a career, right? It is not. It is not a career.
No,
it is actually a service. It is a citizen's duty, right, that they have decided to take on, right, to serve, the general good, right? Yeah. So we're saying each constituency, the people should select people that they trust to send to Dáil and who will come back and take their, if you like, their views on the issues to be resolved.
So how are you going to energise the people, Brendan? Because in this part of the world, and I did some work in conjunction with Dublin City Council a couple of years ago on this one, and we discovered that in the council elections, in some parts, less than 30% of the people vote. So isn't there a real danger that with all the noble sentiments that we end up is that the vested interests, or whatever they are, effectively take control, and they're particularly easy to do that when only small numbers of people are involved, and that's one of the real challenges. And I'd be very interested to hear what thoughts you have as to how you actually energise people to engage in the political process, because I think that's incredibly important as participation in democracy rather than the old representative approach we've had.
Right. Well, one of the issues is that you get lack of participation when people don't see any point, right? Yeah. Now, I don't call this apathy, right? Mm-hmm. If you are working day in and day out to pay a mortgage, and maybe your wife is also doing the same, right? Mm-hmm. Your partner, your wife, and maybe, like some of us have children with special needs or whatever, and you're to the pin of your collar to deal with those issues and so on, right? You don't have time to involve yourself, if you like, in sort of the fundamentals of sorting out all the problems of the country, right? Yeah. So, in my view, you show people how they can get involved, right? It's a very simple idea, right? That you have town hall meetings in all the zones of a constituency, right, for the people to discuss the selection and election of decent, honest people as representatives. Mm-hmm. And those meetings are reconvened for every prepared session of the Dáil, right? In other words, instead of having this sort of endless sort of interminable Dáil sessions that go on, right? Yeah. You might have discrete 10-day sessions, which are well prepared for maybe a month or two before each session, so the decisions taken are the decisions of the people that have been canvassed and voted upon in the constituency.
Sure. I'd be interested. How are you looking at? Are you looking at having multi-seat constituencies here, Brendan, or how would that? I don't want to get too distracted about the structure of it, but it seems to me.
I think you leave the structure alone. The point is, we don't want, as I keep saying, let's get diverted about reforming this, that, and the other. Right? What I'm saying is, we should change our behaviour as voters. Yeah. Let us do for ourselves. That's the difference. Now, I don't think there's anything wrong with multi-seat constituencies as such, right? In other words, if you have a constituency of, I don't know what it is, 60,000 or 80,000 voters, right? And you've got 4 or 5 people's representatives, it would take 4 or 5 people's representatives to bring back a proposal to such a large constituency and actually have a discussion within a relatively short time to decide on how we want to vote on a piece of legislation.
Okay.
In other words, it may be that you might reorganise it, but let's leave that aside. That's not the issue for this election. Okay. This election is change your representative, but put your representative in, not a representative of a political party.
Okay. Would you like to see something changed in that, so that at least the ones we have, they run more of a risk of not squeezing in on the 3% like one candidate did, or the jockeying that the current system throws up?
Well, okay, there's lots of things. I'm trying to avoid, as I keep saying, sort of trying to reform the constitution when we haven't even got the first base, right? Okay. But my view is that there's no point talking about Australia or the UK or whatever, simply because they don't consult with their constituents either, right? Mm-hmm. They don't actually receive a mandate for what they do in their parliament either, and they're no more representative of the people than the people that we have in Dáil Éireann, right? Mm-hmm. They all represent vested interests, and they all do the same thing. Sure. So the point is that we may have to devise a new model, but first of all, let's get people in the Dáil who can actually bring about proposals for such changes, right?
No
we don't have to go to the election this time with those issues.
Yeah. Are you guys then proposing to put up candidates, and if so, how are you proposing to select them?
We think the people of the constituencies throughout the country should select and put up candidates, right? Yeah. And the CPPC, as we call it, the People's Convention, is the organisation that is setting about doing this, right? Yeah. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a launch meeting in Cork. We've had 2 more meetings this week. We've other ones coming up in Wexford and Waterford. And we have a meeting coming up in Dublin, right? Sure. A launch meeting in Dublin. Yeah. So our idea is that if we can galvanise this idea, if we can actually galvanise people around this idea, that people will see it happening, and then they will also want to get stuck in and get involved, right? Yeah. But for us, the People's Convention is an organisation of every single voter in this country. Yeah. In other words, you don't have to sign up to be a member. We consider you a member from day one, right?
Yep. Do you consider it an energy rather than what I call an entity in that sense? In other words, you're trying to galvanise people, you're trying to energise people rather than say, here's an idea, carry it. How would you respond to that one, Brendan?
Well, it's a number of things, right? First of all, it is an actual organisation. It has a website. It has people, if you like, with particular roles in trying to build it and so on, right? But we need to replicate this on the ground in every constituency, right? Mm-hmm. So at the moment, if you like, is organising on a national basis, and wherever it's stirring up sufficient interest, it's organising meetings in those areas, right? Sure. Yeah. We've got people travelling from Donegal to our meeting in Dublin. We had people travelling from Clare to the meeting in Cork and so on, right? Sure. So it is gathering interest, it's gathering momentum, and people are being invigorated by the idea. So you have to have an actual organisation, and in every constituency you create an actual committee to make sure it happens in that constituency, right? Sure. So there will be an organisation, but the idea, if you like, the energising idea is actually what matters, it's the big idea.
It's a grassroots idea.
Yeah.
Any thoughts at this stage, or any information you could give us about what constituencies you might expect to have people running in? Because I don't want to call them candidates, but people offering themselves with these ideas.
Well, we are pretty optimistic that we might get 1, 2 or 3 core constituencies, right? Like, I mean, if the idea takes off, we're going to have one in every constituency in the country, right? And we're going to work very hard now to try and make it happen in 3, 4, 5 constituencies in Dublin, right? Mm-hmm. The problem is we've been working on this, say, for about 8 months. So the thing is, the election is coming rather quicker than we expected. But nevertheless, it would be very significant, in my opinion, for the people of this country to see how representatives of this type would conduct themselves against all others that they would see in Dáil Éireann. And it actually might have an influence on what happens in Dáil Éireann, even if we didn't sweep them out of power, right? Yep. In other words, we really want to wipe the slate and get rid of every single existing TD in Dáil Éireann, right?
Yep. We'll. The reason why I asked that, Brendan, is because we will be running almost what you would call town hall meetings, and if if you're not running in these parts, we will certainly be delighted to have people from the People's Convention as part of the audience who can question the existing ones. The other issue, and what we would hope is that anybody who's listening to this will be sufficiently enthused to go and find out more for themselves. You mentioned you have a website. Could you just give our listeners some details of that, Brendan, so that we can share it with them?
Sure. If you type CPPC into the Google, it'll be the first sort of 10 hits that comes up, because it's actually getting an awful lot of hits.
Is it .org, net, com, or what?
Oh, yeah, sorry, cppc.ie. So
.ie, okay, yeah.
So it's www.cppc.ie.
Yeah, no, I've seen that myself, and it has actually laid out quite a lot of what you stand for and what you believe in. And I would certainly recommend that people go to that website and find out some more. You've also got contact details as well if people want to find out. So ring up people, is that right?
Yes.
We won't give that out now. They can,
okay.
Yeah. The other bit as well, and this is what I think a lot of our listeners will be, next Tuesday, which I think is it the 18th?
The 18th.
The
correct,
18th
yeah.
of January. You're having a meeting. Tell us about that, Brendan, and how can people go to that?
Okay, CPPC, the People's Convention, was actually launched at the end of November at the ICTU march that took place in Dublin, right? And then we had a formal launch in Cork 2 weeks ago. We're having a formal launch in the Gresham Hotel in Dublin on Tuesday the 18th at 8 o'clock. Yep. And everybody is welcome to come along. And if they can't, they can follow what's happening on the website.
Mm-hmm. So it's cppc.ie. CPPC. Yes.
.ie.
Yeah. And you'll be able to find out. But if you're just hearing the end of this, go to our website and you can hear the entire interview, or go to our podcast, which is www.nearpodcast.org. Brendan, we will certainly be hearing a great deal more between now and the election, but I think you would agree the People's Convention, it's not just for elections, it's for life.
Exactly.
And so I think you've got the germ of a very good idea here. We hope that more people will go to and find out more about it for themselves, and that's how it prospers, isn't it?
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Brendan, Doris, thank you for your time today. Yes, well, that's it for tonight's edition of Northside Tonight. Our thanks to Brendan Doris for sharing us with us his aspirations for the political reorganisation or reform of this country. If you'd like to find out some more, go to the meeting next Tuesday. That's the 18th of January. It'll be taking place at the Gresham Hotel at 8 p.m, and I'm sure you'll find some very interesting and some very like-minded souls. I'm Mick Fitz saying have a fabulous weekend, and be back with us again on Monday at 6 p.m. when Northside Tonight returns.